night before Christmas, when all through the house, not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there. Now there's a much bigger reason we all gather round, singing and shouting a glorious sound, for tomorrow's the day that our Savior was born, and we celebrate here at the night before.
Well, when I was a teenager, first time I had a real kind of steady job, and I started making some money, and so I was feeling generous this one Christmas, and I wanted to buy my grandparents a gift I'd never had before. I never even made them stuff. To me, it didn't seem like they care about anything that I could make. I wasn't very crafty, and so I finally had some money. I'm going to try to do something special, something meaningful. So I put a lot of thought into the gifts I was going to give my grandparents. And so for my grandmother, she French Canadian, shotguns and just a real, I wouldn't say cowboy because she was from the north, but just a real lady, just a real lady. And so I wanted to buy her a gift. Now, the thing about my grandmother that I knew at that time in my life is she loved cats and she wanted a kitten. She would just hope that one day she'd be able to have one. Now, my grandfather, conversely, hated animals and didn't want any animals in the house. And so anytime anybody even made a joke about it, he'd start cussing in French. And so it was just, everybody knew, poor Meme, she's never going to have a cat, and poor Meme, Pepe's such a grump. But so I'm like, I know what I'm going to do. I have a great idea for my grandmother to get her a gift because she always wants a cat. So I got her a Gigapet. I don't know if you remember this. 1995. I bought my grandmother one of that, and I'll never forget the look on her face when she opened it up and she had no idea what it was. And I'm like, you always wanted a cat, so I got you one on a keychain. And so 6 months later, we went back to her house. It was on top of her fridge, and it was dead. She didn't know how to feed it or anything, so the poor digital cat lost all of its RAM. It was just done for. And tonight we're going to look for just a couple minutes about the story of the wise men. And these wise men brought gifts to Jesus after his birth, and people always make fun of them for that. So if you've ever been in church, you've ever seen a church skit about the wise men, or heard a pastor preach about the wise men, they always make fun of it, like, oh, gold I get, but frankincense and myrrh, were these guys drunk? What was going on? And why would they offer such a terrible gift to a baby? Well, I want to look at that. There's some significant things in that story that maybe you've never considered before. And I think what they did even has made an impact on us tonight. So I want to look at that. So let's read this portion of the scripture out of Matthew chapter 2. Starts, after this interview, the wise men went on their way. Now, in a few minutes, I'm going to read the rest of the Christmas story. So I'll be standing back over there and I'll read the rest of the story. Let me clue you into what I'm going to read. The wise men were likely from Persia or Arabia, and they were very intellectual men. They were very smart, which is why they were called wise men. And so they were able, through some of the ancient manuscripts, to determine that an event was going to happen. And so when a new star appeared, they began to look through the manuscripts, and they discovered that in the West was going to be born a new king, according to the old Bible manuscripts. And so they begin to follow that star out of hope of seeing this new king. So they show up, and they have a meeting with a high official, a guy named Herod, and they said, hey, we're looking for the newborn king of the Jews. And this was very disconcerting to Herod because he was the current king of the Jews. If you just imagine you being president of the Star Wars fan club, and then someone shows up at your house like, hey, we're looking for the newborn president of the Star Wars fan club. You're going to be like, no one's going to take my throne, no one. And and so you've probably already seen Rogue One like 8 times already by this point. So, and so no one's going to out-nerd me. Well, that's kind of what Herod thought, like, I'm the tyrant here. There's no other tyrants allowed. And so he went and talked with his people, and what he tried to do is to trick the wise men into finding the new baby for him, and his ultimate plan was he was going to kill him. Well, we'll talk about that in a second. So as we continue reading here, so after they talked with Herod, they went on their way. And the star that they had seen in the east guided them to Bethlehem. It went ahead of them and stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were filled with joy. They entered the house and saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshipped him. Then they opened their treasure chests and gave him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And then this is where people do some cheap joke and everybody laughs. So now think about this. They get a bad rap for this, but let's put this kind of in a modern context and see about how you'd respond. So tomorrow, Monday, you get a phone call to your cell phone. It's someone you've never spoken to from calling from the other side of the Atlantic. And so in their British accent, they let you know that Prince William Prince William, I believe, I'm not really into royalty, but Prince William and Kate Middleton, they've had a new baby, and they want you to come meet the baby. And you're like, why me? I don't know who they are. Why do they want me to come? But they're like, nope, we want you to come, fly over. They are excited. They want you to meet their baby. So you hop on a plane, you come over, you get over there, you're like, I should probably bring him a gift, but what do you bring with your means and with your ability to a child prince, to a prince? Like, what do you bring for them? So you walk in, they're all excited to meet you, and there's the baby, and you're like, I can't believe I'm here in the palace, and here's the baby, and you hand them your little bag, and it has paper towels sticking out of it because you forgot to buy tissue paper, and you're like, hey, I know I never met you, but I bought a gift for your baby. And they opened it up, and Kate Middleton's like, oh, blanket, how lovely. You're like, yeah, I got it from Target. And then they're like, you shouldn't have. You're like, oh, it's no big deal. It's on clearance, and I used my red card, so I got another 5% off. And just imagine, like, what are you going to bring to the prince and princess of the United Kingdom? Like, so what are these guys going to bring? And we make fun of them, like, oh, Mary, why you give that to a baby? What else are you going to give the baby who created the heavens and the earth? What are you going to give? Hey, I brought you a pine tree. Like, oh, yeah, I created those. Oh, I brought you some coral. No, yeah, I created that too. Oh, I brought you a panda bear. I created that. What are you going to bring? But their gifts had some significance that I want to look at just quickly. Now, first, their gift revealed that they saw him as king. It wasn't just a baby. It's not just showing up at the hospital giving a baby. Now, Jesus at this point of his life was probably 1 or 2 years old, but their gifts were extravagant. Now, because, we don't really have any context for frankincense and myrrh, we don't understand this, but at that time, those things were rare and they were valuable. So frankincense was probably, in today's market at that time, was worth about $500 a pound. I mean, this is expensive stuff. Myrrh was probably about $4,000 a pound, and that's how rare it was. And then gold this week is selling for $1,100 an ounce, making a gold bar worth $452,000. And it doesn't say they came and they opened up their satchel and gave Jesus a gift, or they brought him a gift bag. No, they opened up their treasure chests, plural. They gave an extravagant and wealthy gift that only a king would deserve. And only that you would give a king. I remember reading my baby book when I was a kid, and I was like 8 years old, and my mom had wrote down in my baby book what everybody gave me, and I went up to my mom as an 8-year-old, I'm like, you owe me some money. These people gave me like $80. Where's my money? And my mom's like, I spent it. And I was so furious. But just imagine, like, Mom, where's my billions here? Some guys showed up from what's east of us. nothing's east of us. We're at the shore. Some guys traveled from Vermont to my birth. They brought me thousands and thousands of dollars in collectible action figures. Where are they? I liquidated them for diapers. Just think about that. So it's a gift for only a king. It's a valuable gift. Now, there's an insanely practical aspect of that gift for that time for that couple. Now, when they left, Herod discovered that that they never came back. And so he now knows the future king exists somewhere in his kingdom, somewhere in the town of Bethlehem. So he sends a decree and order for every child, every boy aged 2 and under to be executed. So just imagine that. Shows the army, they start going house to house, killing kids. All right, and the plan was to get Jesus. In the middle of the night, Joseph is awoken by another dream. The Lord speaks to him and says, get up, get out immediately. Go to Egypt. You have got to get out of there. Herod's going to try to kill the baby. So, he's a carpenter. His wife is a stay-at-home mom. He's not loaded with money, so he can't just get up and go to Egypt. Just think about you. If God wakes you up in the middle of the night and says, hey, get out of here. Someone's going to try to kill you. Move to Egypt. That's going to cost you a ton of money between flights and passports and airport food. You're going to go broke. You probably couldn't move your entire family right now if you wanted to. And maybe you want to. It's a pretty miserable, rainy morning. But what happened is the gifts that the wise men gave allowed the message of Jesus to go further than Herod wanted it to. Their gifts helped Joseph to move his family to Egypt, and then they potentially lived in Egypt for 2 years before Herod died, and they got the okay from God to move back to Israel. Now, we can't assume that Joseph could just find work there, because if you remember the story of the Old Testament with Moses, the Egyptians had millions of Jewish people as their slaves, and then they left. All right, so there could have been still at this time racial prejudice, and probably not easy for a Jewish guy to just show back up in town in Egypt and find gainful employment. But likely they were able to live off of these gifts that the wise men gave them through this time. Had Joseph and Mary not had the financial ability to move, had Herod been successful in trying to assassinate Jesus, then the message of Jesus would have stopped with the shepherds and the wise men. But because of their generosity, the message spread throughout that region. 100 years after Jesus was born, just 100 years after he was after he was wrapped in swaddling clothes and stuck inside a feeding trough, there were 4 million Christians in that part of the world. 4 million. From a baby to 4 million people whose lives had been changed. Their gift was significant. Their gift also changed and affected generations. Because there are in the world today 2.6 billion people who say, I believe that Jesus is the Son of God. I believe that he was born of a virgin. I believe he died on a cross. I believe he rose from the grave 3 days later. I believe he's saved me, he's forgiven me, and he's changed my life. 2.6 billion people in the world right now. Because wise men were generous to God. That's significant. In this room tonight, there are people whose lives have been changed by Jesus. Not by a church, not by some stories, but because of a very real person who was once living on this earth, who was once born of a baby, but is still alive, still cares about us, still loves us, still is after us. Still changing people's lives. This year at Restoration Church, we water baptized 12 people. That is, you might have seen something like that in movies. That is just a significant moment in a person's life where they publicly tell the world, I'm following Jesus. people's lives are being changed. And you are no different than me. You're no different than us. That if you will believe that Jesus is the Son of God, if you will ask him to forgive you and to save you, and if you will start to follow him, your life will be changed. Every single person who believes in Jesus, who asks him for forgiveness, for salvation, and begins to follow him, their life will be changed. Your yesterday will be different than your tomorrow if you make the decision today to follow him. So what I want to do is to give you an opportunity to give him your life. So what we're going to do is we're all going to close our eyes. I'm going to just give you a template of a prayer. These words aren't magical. You can put this prayer into any words you want. And if you're saying it to Jesus and you're believing it in your heart, then he does something miraculous in your life. He forgives you of every wrong thing you've done. He sets aside a place for you in heaven, and he begins to work in your life this very moment. So I'm going to pray a prayer, and you can repeat this back to God. You can write this down to pray it later. You can hold this till the time when you're ready to believe. You're going to continue hearing more about Jesus and investigating more about Jesus. There is something in your heart that's saying this is true and this is right, but you're not ready yet. Then get ready to be ready and begin to and listen to this. And it is a simple prayer. Jesus, tonight I give you my life. It's all I have. It's all you want. I believe that you came to earth as a baby, that you came to save mankind, that you came to save me. I ask you to forgive me and to teach me to follow you. Amen. And when you pray that prayer or whatever, the words that you want to use to express to him the similar thought, I want to follow you, Jesus. I need you, Jesus. Then what happens is he forgives you. He saves you. He helps you to begin living out the life you were created to live. It is a miraculous, powerful thing. And that's why we do everything that we do here at Restoration Church. That's why some little old ladies baked 200 cookies in their living room, because they wanted you to hear about Jesus. That's why the band has been practicing for months, because they want you to hear about Jesus. That's why we open the Bible every single week, to hear and learn about Jesus, because he changes everything. He changes everything. Why don't you stand to your feet, and we're going to sing a song together. Or they're going to sing and we'll worship. I don't know where you need to be. I don't want to take your spot. What happens, those of you who've, in your heart, you've made a decision tonight, let God begin to do the work in you right now that he's been waiting for.